This English language A-level video is all about language diversity, and it's actually the fourth video in a series of videos about language, occupation and power. So this one deals with discourse community, and it also talks about the key characteristics of talk at work. So let's start off with the notion of discourse community. It's an important element on the AQA course. There's a definition of it in the textbook on page 14. What is a discourse community? Well, it's just a group of people who are joining together to try to achieve some kind of specific common goal. And they achieve these sorts of goals through intercommunication, and they communicate in a number of different ways, and they often develop their own very special, unique, distinctive language styles. Now, to be a discourse community, according to the researcher John Swales, there are essentially 6 characteristics. So let's have a look at them. So this is defined by John Swales, and this is his text, The Concept of Discourse Community. And he's arguing, well, if your community doesn't have all of these characteristics, it's not a discourse community. So let's have a look at them. Number 1, a discourse community has a broadly agreed set of common public goals. So let's assume that you are in my A-level English language class, then our common goal is to be learning more about English language, for me to be preparing you for the AQA English language A-level exam, and then you to be very successful in that and to go on to further successes later on in life. That's our broad goal. That's number 1. So number 2, a common discourse has mechanisms of intercommunication amongst its members. Well, of course we do, because I communicate with you not only through these videos, but on slideshows, in essays, in lessons, etc. So we've got a number of different mechanisms by which we are communicating with each other. 3, a discourse community uses participatory mechanisms, primarily to provide information and feedback. Yeah, the key word here is participatory. The idea is that you over there, you're not just passive learners, that you're interacting with me, I'm getting feedback from you, you're in my lessons, you're talking, you're speaking, and therefore it's a participatory action that's going on. That's 3. Number 4, a discourse community utilizes and hence possesses one or more genres in the communicative furtherance of its aims. Yes, well, you think of all of the different genres that we use in this course. You might be, for example, writing magazine articles. You might be doing presentations to the class. You might be writing evaluative essays. So you've got 3 different examples there of different genres. Number 5, in addition to owning genres, a discourse community has acquired a specific lexis. Well, of course, English language A-level, like any A-level, has its own terms, its own jargon. So if I said to you, don't forget your AO2 concepts, you would immediately know what I meant, of course. Or if I said, well, don't forget to apply all of your different language levels, you'd know what I meant. And even at a more precise level, if I said, oh, look on that second line at the epistemic modal auxiliary verb, then most of you should know what that means. Okay, so that's number 5. And then number 6, a discourse community has a threshold with members of a suitable degree of content and discursal expertise. Right, so you listen to me because you know that I'm a qualified teacher, and you know that I'm qualified because I'm in a certain position of authority in the college, and you are also qualified to be on my courses well because you've got into the college, you've got a certain number of GCSEs, and that's qualified you to be part of my discourse community. So these are the 6 characteristics that John Swales is talking about. Here's another example of applying Swales' concept of a discourse community to an occupational area, and he's thinking here about Christianity. So a religion is an example of a discourse community, and it fulfills Swales' 6 characteristics. So number 1, the common goals. Well, the common goals are things like spreading the faith, coming together with certain values, achieving enlightenment, whatever that is, spreading good morals, etc. Intercommunication. Well, you've got face-to-face at meetings, you've got bulletins, you've got online discussions. 3, the goals of the mechanism it uses is to provide information to the churchgoers and give feedback to higher members. So it's participatory. It's not just the vicar talking to the congregation. It's participatory. Number 4, genres. Think of all the different genres that are there in Christianity, whether it be the Bible, the holy books, the psalms, the prayers, the sermons, the hymns, etc. Number 5, a specific lexis and vocabulary. Pope, Amen, host, tabernacle, pews, God, saints, all from the semantic field of. And then 6, members of expertise. So you've got the idea of a hierarchy, haven't you, in the church? If it's Roman Catholic, maybe you've got the Pope as the leader. You've also got bishops and archbishops. You've got priests and deacons. So you've got hierarchical levels of power that's going on. This beautifully demonstrates Swales's concept of a discourse community in an occupational area. Let's have a look now at a bit more research. So this is research done by a couple of linguists called Drew and Heritage, and they listen to a lot of talk that's going on in occupational areas, and they identified some of the key features of talk at work and how it's different from everyday conversation. It's summarised by a writer called Kuster in The Language of Work. And here are those 6 features. So first of all, you've got goal orientation, and this is the idea that participants in workplace conversations usually, not always of course, but usually focus on specific occupational tasks or goals. So it's goal orientated. Second thing, you've got restrictions on turn taking. Okay, there are specific turn-taking rules that are going on in the workplace. And even when there are no actual explicit special rules, there may well be unwritten restrictions on who speaks when. So, for example, in doctor-patient consultations, it does tend to be the doctor who asks the question and leads the conversations. We then have the notion of allowable contributions. So there are restrictions on what sorts of things can be said in the workplace by certain people. Okay, and then fourthly, we have this notion of professional lexis. So workplace context may be reflected in the lexical choices. You may have very specialist lexis being used or jargon used by those speakers. Fifthly, we have structure. It's the idea, and it kind of links into the second one about turn taking, that workplace interactions may be structured in quite specific ways. Think, for example, about the way that the teacher sets up a lesson, a live lesson in class. And then finally, asymmetry. So workplace and professional interactions are often asymmetrical, meaning that one speaker or group of speakers have more power than others. So again, you could go back to the example of your doctor and your patient, or it may be a manager and a subordinate, or in the classroom it may be a teacher and a student. There is asymmetry. There's an imbalance, there's a power imbalance between the participants. These are Drew and Heritage's 6 features of talk at work and how it's very distinctively different to everyday conversation. We're now going to have a look at some specific research that's done by somebody called Eric Fringinal, and he looked at outsourced call centres, and he looked at the discourse of telephone conversations between a Philippines-based call centre and their American customers. And he found patterns. He found some very common patterns in the language of staff members. The staff members were doing these sorts of things. A lot of these things you would kind of expect. Since they're talking on the phone to somebody, they are bound to be using second-person pronouns. They're using imperatives like let's do such and such because they're talking about products. Clearly, they're going to be talking about some brand names and proper nouns. They tended to use the present tense. They can use quite specialist and technical vocabulary. Politeness markers are a common feature in their language, as well as discourse markers, which kind of shepherd the the customer through the conversation. Unlike everyday chat, limited use of hedges and vague language, and certainly fewer topic shifts than you would get in everyday conversation. As for the people on the other end of the line, the customers, he also found there were some common characteristics there. So first person pronouns, the use of the past tense, lots of questioning words like what and why, quite informal lexis and quite short responses as well. So quite a difference between the language of the call centre's workers and the language of the customers. That's Eric Fringanol, and it's based in the Philippines. So when you're analysing any kind of occupational discourse in talk, look at these areas. What seem to be the significant contextual influences on the language? Is this written language? Is it spoken language? Is it multimodal, mixed mode, somewhere in the middle? Who is present? Is there instrumental power going on where there is somebody of authority in the room or not? What's going on at the beginning of the conversation? What are the opening strategies that are being used by the workers? What are the terms of address? So what names are given to each other? What politeness strategies are employed? Do we have examples of positive face and negative face? Remember the difference between positive face means using language which is overtly praising, whereas negative face means respectful, distance, more detached, kind of depersonalized language. So do you get positive face or negative face in these interactions? What kind of adjacency exchanges have we got on? Have we got things like the IRF pattern that we saw with Coulthard and Sinclair, initiation, response, feedback? So what kind of patterns are we getting in adjacency exchanges? Do apply grace occasionally, because if you're looking at a transcript of a conversation and you're thinking, this is not a successful conversation, it's unsuccessful in some way, it's breaking down, then it may well be that one or both or all of the participants are violating Grice's maxims, right? Quantity, quality, manner, and relevance. Look at convergence or divergence. That's Howard Giles' notion of accommodation theory. So do the people speaking together, do they seem to be converging in their language, or do they seem to be diverging in their language? And look at the way that the conversations end. Look at the closing strategies. Here's an example of a customer service phone call, finally. So here is the staff member. Good morning, this is Maria speaking. How can I help you today? Hi, I was wanting to cancel my membership, my account, please. No problem, sir. Can I please take your postcode? I see from our records, Joe, that you've been a customer for several years now. Can I ask you why you wish to close your account? It's just that I don't use it enough, to be honest, so it's like a waste of time, to be honest. I understand that, Joe. But before I close your account, what I can do for you today is inform you of a very special offer due to your loyalty with us. Brilliant. Okay, so try and apply the sorts of ideas that I was talking about on the previous slide there. And just to get you going there, let's just talk about this opening here. So we've got a greeting, a friendly greeting from the staff morning saying good morning. We've got self-identification, where notice how she's using first names. Here she's calling herself Maria. So this is an attempt at synthetic personalization, where she's trying to create a relationship with the customer that's friendly. So this is Maria speaking. How can I help you today? So it's a kind of formulaic utterance that we've got here with the use of the nice epistemic modal auxiliary verb can, which kind of implies that this person is just all about helping the other person. And you'll see that there's quite a marked difference between the language of the staff member there and the fluency of the customer. Obviously, the customer doesn't do this for a living, isn't on the telephone all the time, and therefore there is more hesitancy and there are more fillers. So you've got your non-verbal filler there. You've got your mitigating adverb just, where the customer is trying to show that they're not asking for the world here. They're asking for something very straightforward. And also the negative face way that the customer has used the past tense progressive form. So instead of saying, I want to cancel my membership, he's saying, I was wanting. So that use of the past tense there is a kind of distancing device, which gives you an element of negative face, allied with the politeness strategy of asking please, that adverb at the end of the utterance. So there's some quite interesting things going on. You can see how it develops, how initially when we listen to this, we're made to think that, you know, he's going to get his wishes accepted straight away, where the call centre worker says no problem, sir. But then actually, as the conversation goes on, the staff member is using all sorts of language in order to shape and manipulate the customer's response. All of which is great food for thought in terms of answering a question like, evaluate the idea that in public life, your occupation is the most significant factor in language usage. Thank you very much.